Hello everyone. Welcome to our very first virtual fungus walk. I'm going to start this walk in the same way that I would if all of you were gathered here with me, by telling you a few things you need to know when you go into the woods. First of all, this is bug season, particularly mosquitoes, and we have a pond in each of the woods and we do get mosquitoes. Also, you need to be a little concerned about ticks because we have deer that go through here. If you stay on the path, that isn't going to be a big problem. As far as the mosquitoes are concerned, you want to dress properly for the woods to make them less of a problem. So you need a hat, you need long sleeves, you need long pants, you need light colors, you need decent shoes. You know, sandals are not a good idea. You want socks on so your ankles are covered. And there's a couple other things you can do. Bug repellent, of course, but shirts like this one have a repellent in them, and you can get them from various places. They're approved by the FDA for humans to wear. Often gardening places have this kind of thing. You can also get scarves that are like that, and trousers, pants. So the other thing that you really need to know to stay safe in the woods is what poison ivy looks like. Especially if you are bringing children in, you want to be sure that they know what it is, and it's a good idea, especially at this time of year and in both of our woods, to keep them in the center of the path as much as possible so they're not wandering off into poison ivy. Now come over here and let's take a look at it. This is poison ivy right here. It has the 3 leaves that you've all heard about, and it has quite a characteristic toothed edge. So you'll see it on the ground like this, and also climbing like that. And they also produce very heavy vines that you'll see on trees. They're easily recognizable. They look like gigantic millipedes, tiny little legs sticking out all along of them. And you don't want to touch them either because the resin that causes problems is there as well. So do yourself a favor and learn to recognize poison ivy and stay away from it. Okay, let's go walking. Here's our first fungus. Just looking at this, I'm guessing that this is turkey tail. There's a chance it might also be false turkey tail, and there's a surefire way to find out, which I'm going to do right now. This will give you a nice close-up look at the top of this too. See the zones of kind of velvetiness. Mm-hmm. And that's a sign of both turkey tail and false turkey tail. Turn it over. Okay, we've got turkey tail. See the pores? Tiny little openings into tubes where the spores form. And if this were false turkey tail, it would be completely smooth, because false turkey tail is not a polypore, it's a parchment. And that's how you tell the difference between the two. Also, turkey tail has a tendency to rosette. So we kind of have a little bit of rosetting starting there, but sometimes when they're on top of the log, the rosettes are very pronounced. And it's actually velvety to the touch as well as to the look. The turkey tail shows up in a number of different colors, and that's why its Latin name is Trametes versiform, because of the versatility of the cap. Now over here, I have something else to show you. On that log there, I haven't gone over to look at it, but from here it looks like milk white tooth polypore, which is a crust, and it's growing in a fashion that's called resupinate, which means that instead of having the sterile cap out, we have the fruiting surface facing out. So it's essentially reversed from what you would expect. And that's very typical of, well, it's the way the crusts do it, but it's typical of some of the polypores as well. And then they shelf around the edge, some of them. So, okay. We're stopping here for a moment because I mentioned the poison ivy vine. And well, sometime last year, this log showed up on the trail. We still don't know how it got here, but it has one of those vines on it. So this will give you a chance to see what that looks like. And here it is right here. We do have at least one tree here in the woods that's still standing that has a living vine on it. Very impressive. Many of you will be familiar with this. This is lichen, and it's a combination of a fungus and, well, they keep changing their minds about what it is. So I've heard algae, and I've also heard cyanobacteria, and I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come up with something else. This is a good partnership for a fungus because fungi can't produce or doesn't have chlorophyll, so it can't produce its own food. And so when it's teamed up with an organism that can, then they have a mutual relationship where the fungus is supplying the structure and the algae or cyanobacteria is providing the food. So it works out very well. What we have here is something you can watch for when you're walking in the woods. This is a mark of fungal activity. Fungi are so important in the woods because they can dissolve things that other organisms can't. And what we're looking at here is a log that has white rot. And what that means is that a fungus has removed the, let me get it straight, has removed the lignin. So what we're looking at is cellulose. And as we walk along, I'll watch for the reverse situation where we'll see a log where the cellulose has been removed, and what we're looking at is the lignin. Here we have a crust. I'm pretty sure this is orange poria or poria. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but some of the crust fungi are quite lovely to look at, these bright colors. They haven't been studied as much as other fungi have, and so far I haven't found a guide for just crust. Every guidebook has a few, but there's many more than a few. But they're worthwhile watching for because some of them, as I say, are stunning. What we have here is a slime mold. I am not responsible for the name. It gets its name because its very first stage is kind of slimy. It's like an amoeba, kind of. It can crawl across the floor of the woods. And as it's doing that, it's ingesting little bits of bacteria, little bits of debris from the forest floor. And when the conditions are right, it then finds a higher place to perch. It isn't rooted like a fungus would be. It is literally perching there. And it goes into the next phase where it starts to change shape in preparation to spore. There was a time when people thought that they were fungi, but they're not. They have their own kingdom now. There's a number of things that make them different. Principally the one that in the first stage they can move on their own. They move like an amoeba does with the streaming cytoplasm. At that point, they are single cell with many, many nuclei. And then when they get to this stage, they start to gather together, and some of them change appearances dramatically. This one maybe doesn't quite so much as some of the others do, but you know, they're one of the really interesting organisms in the woods. We have 3 mushrooms to look at here, including one of my very favorite. So, we'll start with this one. This is hexagonopored polypore, and I'm going to turn it over so you can see the underside and see the hexagonopores. These are a little bit mature, but you can still get a feel for them. They're a little darker around the edges than they would be if they were fresher. So what we're looking at here is the fruiting surface. Those little holes are openings to the tube layer where the spores are produced. Now this one is a particular favorite of mine. It's looking a little bit tired now because we've had some dry weather. Okay, careful here. This is one that once you know what you're looking at, you can identify it very easily. This is common splitgill. It was the first mushroom that I learned the Latin name for, and I learned it very fast because it's Schizophyllum commune. Almost, the common name is almost a translation of the Latin. And, the kind of velvety surface and so on is nice, but it's the undersurface that's really interesting. This one you can see pretty well. This is what gives it the name of splitgill. These are not actually gills. These are folds of the flesh. And sometimes they are almost purple. And also, these can get to be quite large. These are drying up, but once it rains, it'll revive. So that's common splitgill. Now our third one is going to be a little harder to see because it's very, very tiny, and I don't think I can pick up the wood that it's on. Oh, I can. Would that help? Now these are drying out, but this is a marasmius. I think it's Marasmius rotula, and sometimes called horsehair marasmius because the stems look like strands of horsehair. And when they're fresh, they're white. The caps are white, and when and of course the stems remain that way. Maybe, I don't know if we can get a look at the underside. It does have gills. What we have here is a little nest polypore, which is very interesting because it starts out looking like a cup fungus, and then it produces a little shelf. Let's see if I can see where some, now there's one starting there. Tiny little shelf starting. They're always fun to find in the woods because they're very distinctive. Some of these are old from last year, and some of them are fresh. That's a fresh one. But they're fairly young. They haven't put out their shells yet, but they will. And right underneath this part that looks like a cup. Earlier we saw a very old poison ivy vine. Here's one growing on a tree. It's that part on the right there that looks furry. It's been there a long, long time. ends our walk for today. Thank you so much for being with us as we did this for the very first time. And we're looking forward to doing it again. So we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.